Hey everybody, Captain B-Nard here with your BHDL1 Week 1 recap and Week 2 preview. So this is a new thing that I said I was going to be doing in the last couple of videos. Essentially what it's going to be is I am going to go through everything that happened of importance in a given week of the Battle Hub Draft League here, and then going to give you guys a little preview of the next week of gameplay. So pretty straightforward. That being said, we're going to just jump right into it. So, our week, obviously, this week is going to be week 1, and our opponent for this week was Viradu, also known as Biradu from the Discord server. Go ahead and join the Discord server. It's the best place to go for Pokemon Scholar and Violet Wi-Fi battles right now, in my humble opinion. Sorry, I had to do it. Inside joke. But anyway, we were able to get the win here 3-0, which I was very happy about, obviously, in a very long, hard fought, grueling battle. I mentioned it before, but it was actually the longest battle that I've ever recorded here for YouTube. The video was over 42 minutes long. Um, and yeah, this was just an absolute insane game, incredibly hard fought on both sides, well played for the most part on both sides as well, and yeah, it was just a really really good game. No two ways about it. So yeah. Having said that, we're going to go ahead and get into a few of the particulars of the game, kind of reflect on what happened now that I've had some time to digest the game. So here you can see the teams that we brought to the game. So on the left-hand side is my team, obviously. On the right-hand side is his team. And so, as you can see, I brought Arcanine, Gastrodon, Hawlucha, Gudra, Pink Urchin, and Espathra. So there are a couple of notable omissions to the team that I chose to bring here, and obviously the big one is going to be my Iron Moth. So as you guys might recall, Iron Moth was the first Pokemon that I drafted in the league this season. Um, it was also the most expensive Pokemon that I picked up at 16 points. So some people were curious as to why I didn't bring it in week 1 here. And so the answer, quite simply, to that is I did not feel like it really matched up very well against his team. Unfortunately, it seemed like he had quite a few Mons that really walled it, and it didn't seem like a very viable bring from that perspective. So as much as I wanted to bring it, I chose not to, just purely based on the matchup. Another kind of notable omission on my side is going to be the Orthworm, which is another Pokemon that I drafted very high. I believe it was my number 3 draft pick. And once again, I chose not to bring that because it didn't seem to match up very well against what I thought he would bring. Now, in hindsight, seeing what he actually did bring to this match, that actually might have been a pretty good bring. But there was some stuff that he brought that I wasn't expecting. So, hindsight. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of why I brought the Pokemon I brought. Looking at his team that he brought to the game, it was the Hippowdon, Heatran, Thunderous, I believe that's incarnate form, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Weevil, and Noivern. So there were a couple of Pokemon here that I was not expecting him to bring. The big one was Hippowdon. I really was not expecting him to bring the Hippowdon, just purely based on the fact that it doesn't seem like it really matches up super well against my team. And having the Sandstream to set the Sandstorm on the battlefield doesn't seem particularly useful for him, nor does it seem particularly detrimental to me as I don't have a weather-based team. So I was definitely surprised he brought the Hippowdon. I was a little bit surprised he brought the Weevil too. I kind of was like 50-50 on that, thinking he might bring that, but I wasn't sure. Since he did draft it pretty late, as well, he drafted the Hippowdon late in his roster. So I was a little bit surprised about that, but not nearly as surprised as the Hippowdon. Notable omissions on his team. The one thing that I really expected him to bring that he did not was the Galarian Slow King. So that was a Pokemon he had drafted pretty high. I think might have been his number 3 pick, and as well something that was very expensive to draft for him. and I believe it actually matched up relatively well against my team too. So I was a little surprised that he didn't bring that. But that just kind of is what it is. That's kind of the fun slash the roulette of draft league. Is that you never know for sure what your opponent's going to bring, so you have to try and prepare for anything and everything they could bring. And even if you think they're not going to bring something, they very well could bring it. So, um, but yeah, that was kind of the matchup there. Um, so that is going to feed us into this, which is going to be the pros and cons of the game as I see it. So I'm going to give you guys the top two pros and the top two cons of the game as I see it from my perspective. So the pros, obviously, as we mentioned before, and if you watch the game, which I assume if you're watching this, you probably did watch the game, we won the game, obviously, 3-0, so that's obviously the biggest pro of the week is getting the victory, because at the end of the day, obviously, we play to have fun, but also we play to win, so winning is always nice. And the other pro is I feel like I did play pretty well for the most part in this game. I thought that I brought some good strategies and that I was able to execute those strategies, whether it be the Hawlucha, Electric Seed, Pincurchin, or whether it be the Espathra, Calm Mind Sub. I feel like I did execute those strategies. I got them off. Whether or not they worked was a different story, which we'll get into. Um, and then also, I felt like I made some good predictions, some good reads um, against him, which definitely put me in a good spot at certain points in the game. So those were the pros. Now for the two cons, the biggest con of this game this week was what I like to refer to as the three big misplays. So there were three relatively substantial misplays that I made in my game. One of which was very egregious, I have to admit, unfortunately, um, that were definitely just misplays on my side. So I want to touch on them all briefly. Um, so the first one was when I brought Hawlucha in against his Hippowdon. Um, in that situation, I came in with Hawlucha. I popped the Electric Seed to get a defense boost because the electric terrain was active, obviously. Got my defense boost, activated my Unburden, got my speed doubled, and also triggered acrobatics power to be doubled as well with that. So the misplay here, and I only kind of, I guess I could kind of call it half of a misplay, and I'll explain why in a second. But the misplay here was that I burned my Terra for no reason. So, being in against the Hippowdon, I should have figured he might have had Whirlwind, but it was something that I was just hoping he didn't have. Um, so I definitely shouldn't have burned my Terra here, but I ended up terastallizing into a Ghost type because I thought there was a chance he might have like Thunder Fang or Ice Fang or something. I'm not even sure 100% if Hippowdon gets either of those moves, but I thought he could have had some coverage for the Hawlucha on deck with the Hippowdon, which I came to find he did not. But obviously you don't know in the heat of battle. But even not knowing that, I shouldn't have used my Terra in this situation, and I also went for the Swords Dance to try to set up to do, um, you know, huge damage to his team. Now, the reason I call this kind of half of a misplay is because the one thing I definitely shouldn't have done here was I should not have Terra'd. There was no reason to Terra at this point, so I definitely should not have done that. Um, Trying to set up on Hippowdon was questionable because obviously Hippowdon can have Whirlwind, which of course he did have Whirlwind. Now, obviously, you don't know that. I didn't know that at that point in the game. But it was definitely a risk. Now, the other reason I give myself a little bit of a pass on this is because Pink Urchin had been knocked out, meaning that I had no way to reset the electric terrain, and I only had 2 turns left on the electric terrain. So it was kind of now or never to get Hawlucha in and kind of execute that strategy. And unfortunately, he happened to have Hippowdon in when I tried to do that. So I can, while I still, in hindsight, I understand why I did what I did. I still think it was a misplay. Wasting my Terra there was a huge misplay, I think, because that kind of let the cat out of the bag that I was Terra Ghost, which was a strategy that I was kind of trying to surprise him with. So yeah, that was misplay number one. Misplay number two was during the Calm Mind sub war with Espathra and Heatran later on in the game. I opted to Calm Mind all the way up to +4. So This was a mistake on my side because had I run calcs, I should have realized that +3 would have been good enough to remove, or to eliminate, I should say, his remaining Pokemon with one attack each. Um, so I shouldn't have wasted the time and the HP going up to +4 with Calm Mind, because at that point, with 12 total stat boosts, with +6 speed, +3 special attack and special defense, the stored power, I believe, definitely KOs the Heatran from there, regardless of what his set is. And then I think a +3 Shadow Ball definitely KOs the Weevil from there where it was. Regardless of his set. So I was nervous. I wasn't so much nervous in that situation about the stored power not being enough to KO the Heatran, because I was pretty confident that +3 stored power, with 12 stat boosts as I had, would KO the Heatran cleanly. But I wasn't super confident, even from his Weevil at that point in the game had about half health, so I wasn't super confident that the +3 Shadow Ball would be enough to KO the Weevil, although I believe it definitely would have been. Um, so the reason that this was a misplay on my side is because it wasted more time. It forced me to sub again to get the fourth Calm Mind up, which meant that by the time I finally decided to attack the Heatran, um, that I would have less HP in the tank afterward. And so after everything was all said and done, I think I was left with about 55% on the Espathra, whereas if I wouldn't have gone through those motions again, I would have been more closer to 80%, I believe. And that kind of set the stage for, hands down, what was the biggest misplay of the game, which was after I had KO'd the Heatran and the Weevil. I had the Espathra in with all those stat boosts, +4 special attack, special defense, +6 speed. He brings in the Urshifu Rapid Strike. My sub is down, and I switched the Espathra out because I was under the mistaken notion that Surging Strikes, the signature move for Urshifu Rapid Strike, was actually a priority move, which I now obviously know that it is not. So that kind of feeds into my second con of the game, which was not knowing the moves. Um, so yeah, I did not know, and I have no good excuse for not knowing, but I did not know, because I didn't do my homework apparently, that Surging Strikes was not a priority move. Um, so at that point in time, I switched. I had the sweep in the bag with the Espathra, and I switched it out because I was worried about getting KO'd by a priority move that wasn't actually a priority move. So it happens to the best of us. Not that I'm the best of us by any stretch. But I will say in my defense that was not super familiar with Urshifu Rapid Strike. I've never used it. I haven't played against it too much either, and that was all the way back on Sword and Shield, which was a couple of years ago at this point. Um, so yeah, but it is my fault because I should have done my due diligence and done more research on Urshifu Rapid Strike, since I knew there was definitely a 100% chance he was bringing that, as it was his top draft pick and most expensive draft pick. So there was pretty much no way he was not going to bring it. It also matched up very well against my team. Um, so there was no way he was not going to bring it. So I definitely, that was on me. I should have researched Urshifu Rapid Strike more, which I did not. And yeah, that was definitely the misplay of the game right there on my side, which definitely could have cost me the game. Not doing that, or doing what I did there, switching out, could have definitely cost me the game. Fortunately, I was able to still pull it through there. Um, the only thing that it didn't cost me in that, or the only thing I should say that it did cost me in that situation, was differential. So I ended up getting a little bit of a worse differential because of that mistake. But I'm very happy and very thankful that that mistake did not cost me the game, as it easily could have. So we were able to, despite those misplays, we were able to pull through and still get the win, and I am very happy about that. So as I mentioned, with that, that means the Philadelphia Pidgeys are going to start the season at a 1-0 record, which is a good place to be at this point. I am pretty happy with that. Um, and so, yeah, that is going to feed us into week 2. So our week 2 opponent here is going to be Emerald Miner, another opponent that we've played once before. I did neglect to mention we played, that was actually our 4th game against Viridoo. in the week 1 game, but this is actually going to be our second match against Emerald Miner in week 2 here. As I said, we played him once before on Scarlet and Violet here, and so this is a snapshot of his draft league team here, or the I should say the Pokemon that he's drafted. So he's drafted a total of, I believe, 11 Mons here. Yes, 11 Mons, and he does have a pretty stacked roster, I will say. Obviously, he has some huge high point value threats here in the Dragapult, the Ting Lu. He has some good value pickups as well farther down. Obviously, the Paldean Tauros. The Ditto is definitely going to be one to watch if he decides to bring it. And yeah, I just see a pretty stacked roster of just about every Pokemon on this list is something I could see him bringing against me. So I'm obviously not going to reveal much of my strategy because I don't want to screw myself over like that. I'm not that dumb. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty stacked roster. It's very versatile. He can do a lot of different things with it. He has a lot of power on here, but also a lot of setup potential, a lot of pivot potential. And so yeah, he has that wild card again, which is the Ditto, obviously. Which Ditto is a very interesting Pokemon, especially in Draft League, because it is a real wild card. Where if he does decide to bring it, it could definitely cause some trouble. So he has a very solid looking team, and it is definitely going to be an interesting and I'm sure hard fought game for week 2 as well. So but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to continuing on the rest of the season here. But yeah, I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. So thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and/or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. And also stay tuned for week 2 coming your way very soon. So that's it, and we'll see you next time.